Hello everyone and welcome to the very first ChatENG. My channel is ChatUTD, which has been going for a bit less than a year. The reason for starting that was to talk about all things United, particularly at the time. Hopefully the removal of the Glazers from the club, that hasn't happened, and it's morphed into anything and everything to do with United really. But of course the domestic season's come to a close and attention goes to the Euros. And unlike a lot of my fellow United fans, I'm a passionate England fan, want us to do well. And whilst the channel will remain Chat UTD in its name, um, I'm going to change when I talk about England. I'm going to cover the tournament and it's going to become Chat ENG. ENG, of course, short for England, for those who didn't get that already. So today I'm just going to have a quick sort of overview of me as an England fan, what makes me want to do this type of stuff. We're going to look at the friendlies that England have had so far and the mood going into the tournament. A look at the squad, now it's been finalised, preview the group and ultimately ask the question, can we win it? And if we can't win it, who do I think will? In terms of my history as an England fan, as a kid growing up, I loved England just as much as United. I always bought all the shirts, always loved the players, idolised the players. Brian Robson obviously was captain of Man United and England, which was a bonus. My first tournament, I kind of remember Euro '88, but not enough to kind of give too much information about it. Whereas World Cup Italian night was the one for me really, where I kind of watched every single game, had the world chart and all that kind of stuff, and just loved it. And probably the only time when I've felt a little bit disinterested is probably not the right word, but just not the same about England is probably about 99, 2000 sort of era, when there seemed to be a lot of antagonism from England fans towards United. At that time, United were the force in English football and everyone hated us. So it was a bit of a conflict of interest to support a team, as in England, whose fans hated the club that I love. The Beckham stuff wasn't great. Well, I never stopped supporting England. I always wanted us to do well. It just felt a bit weird cheering on a team where I've got other people near me who absolutely can't stand some of my favourite players, obviously United players. I found the Golden Generation difficult to watch because I thought, for as talented as they were, they never lived up to their potential. And it always felt to me like it was a bit of a chore for them to be there. I think club rivalries got in the way. And I looked at other nations and how passionate they were about playing for their country. And I looked at our players and it just almost felt like we were twisting their arm to be there. That's what it looked like. And as a fan, as a working Joe, if you like, you want to see people represent your country that are up for it, that are passionate. And I think the problem for England for a long time until recently has been that we've had players who for their clubs are really good players, up there in terms of some of the best players in the Premier League era certainly, and never transferred that to international football. Now I think it's different, and I have to say, bringing it back to more modern times, I've fallen back in love with England again over the last 6-7 years, because I think there is a club mentality within the team. There's a camaraderie, there's a togetherness. They look like they want to be there. They're a likeable bunch. There's not many players in there that I would say, even with club rivalries, that I dislike. And they're the opposite of that golden generation. I think some of them are not brilliant players, but have found their place in the England team, and Southgate trusts them, and they never really let us down. So I think we've got a flip situation to what it used to be like, and I really like that. The mood going into the tournament is a bit spiky in that obviously we lost to Iceland on Friday night, and you get people getting a bit carried away with that. I would just look back to England's best tournaments, World Cup Italian '90. We played. I'm trying to think who it was. It was some. I think it might have even been like a local Italian team or an Italian League 11 or something like that, in a friendly in the build up to it, and either won 1-0 or drew, or like we're absolutely pants basically. And looked very underwhelming. And I think before Euro '96 went out to Hong Kong, and it was the famous dentist chair pictures and the players all out on the beer. And I'm pretty sure we again drew or lost against a really put like Malaysia or someone like that. I don't know. And of course, look at what happened in that tournament. I just don't read too much into Friday night at all. It doesn't bother me. I think the tournament is just a blank slate. You start again, you go for it. Everyone's going to be up for it. And the build up to, it was a build up towards World Cup, the last World Cup. We were in terrible form. We got beat in the Nations League 4-0 at home by Hungary, and we did all right in that World Cup. So I'm not worried about the friendly against Iceland. At England are damned if they do and damned if they don't in friendlies. You know, we beat Bosnia 3-0 and everyone went, well, it doesn't really matter because it's a friendly. And then you lose 1-0 to Iceland and everyone's going absolutely mental about it. So, well, God, it's not one rule for a defeat and one rule for a win. It either matters or it doesn't. So it's a blank slate as far as I'm concerned. Let's look at the squad. The concern for me is the defence. Maguire and Stones have been mainstays as a partnership. There's actually quite a lot of talented young centre-backs. I'm surprised Branthwaite hasn't gone. So it's a shame he's not there. But even the lad from Crystal Palace, is it Guy? I might have got that name wrong. I'd like to see more of him. But the problem is we've not really seen anything of them because it's always really been Maguire and Stones, certainly on the big stage. So I'm not sure who's going to partner Stones. He's not played a lot for City this year, which might actually do us a favour because hopefully he's fresh. Fullback's an issue as well because Luke Shaw has barely played for United this season, and I don't think he's expected to be fit until the second or third group game. He's our only natural left back in the team, in the squad. In fairness to Shaw, I'm pretty sure he came into the Euros, obviously the one where we got to the final, on the back of a long injury. And just was fit and fired from minute one. He got himself up to speed really quickly. So hopefully that happens again. It's just that if he breaks down, what do? You've got to then put either a centre back over to left. I know Gomez can probably play there, but you've got a centre back going over to left back, or you've got Trippier, who's a right back, playing at left back. We've only got Trippier, Walker, and Shaw as orthodox fullbacks in the squad. And my concern is what happens if we go three at the back, because sometimes Southgate does that as the tournament wears on, and normally Walker is the third centre back. We've only got two fullbacks, wing backs, whatever, in Trippier and Shaw. So I think some of that flexibility is taken away. Of course, he could put a different player in there, but then you're starting to play untested players. So the defence concerns me. Pickford in goal, by the way, is one of those players that I alluded to earlier. Not a brilliant world-class goalkeeper by any stretch of the imagination, and yet has nailed down his place in the England team and has a very good understanding with what's in front of him, and I think never really lets England down. But I don't think he's a particularly great goalkeeper. In the midfield, I think the starting midfield has to be Rice, Bellingham and Mainu. The interesting thing in the midfield is there's no obvious holding midfield player in the squad, and Southgate often plays not just one but two. So maybe he's moving away, not by choice because there's not that many out there maybe in terms of holding midfield, but maybe he's having to move away from being as pragmatic as he normally would. I know Rice can hold in the midfield, but he's evolved into a more he plays further forward for Arsenal. There's not a great deal of depth there, I think, actually, and we'll move on to the forwards in a minute. I think it's more perhaps some of the forwards will, if that original midfield that I just mentioned doesn't play, I think some of the forwards will drop into midfield because Conor Gallagher, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Wharton looks a decent young player actually, but they're not filling me with confidence in terms of tournament-ready players. I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to talk about Mainu. There seems to be a little bit of a narrative out there amongst non-United fans that Mainu's been given this chance because he plays for Man United and it's come too early. Anyone that watches my channel will know I don't just blow smoke up a player's backside because he plays for Man United. I've got really high standards, and for me to praise a United player, they have to be doing something really good. But from my perspective, watching him more often than not this season for Mainu, he's a player who will receive the ball in really tight situations and just be comfortable with that. His first touch is not just positive; it's transformative. He is brilliant at carrying the ball forward. His passing range is really good. He gets on the end of things. He's tough. He's strong. He's very calm and cool and confident. And I just think a very promising young player. If the midfield is going to be Rice, Bellingham, and another, I don't think there's anything else in that squad that's better than Mainu. So I think Mainu would play. And I'm not getting the hate for Bellingham either. I think it's something that we do in England. It's like a player who's potentially one of the best in the world. It's like you build him up, and then as soon as maybe he has a little bit of a tricky run, or he's not playing quite as well as he was before, people start saying he's overrated, he's got too big for his boots, and you hear all this negative stuff about him. What I'd say with Bellingham is he's comfortably England's best player. For me, he's our only genuinely world-class player. You ask France, the Netherlands, Germany, Spain, Italy, Portugal, whoever, would you want him in your team? They would immediately say yes. So he's massive to what England need to do. And then moving on to the forwards, I think the starting three up front would probably be Foden on the left, Kane in the middle, and Saka on the right. As I mentioned before, if he changes the midfield, and I don't know if he'd be brave enough to do this, I think it would maybe potentially that Foden would drop deeper, and maybe even Cole Palmer would drop a bit deeper. He's listed as a forward, Cole Palmer. And then maybe perhaps Anthony Gordon plays where Foden was playing on that left-hand side. Whether Southgate would be brave enough to do that, I'm unsure. An interesting dynamic to watch out for with England is Kane and how deep he drops for England. I know that look, Harry Kane's stats speak for themselves. He's been a consistently prolific goal scorer for God knows how many years. But when I watch him play for England, I don't see the talismanic figure that I think his stats suggest he should be, certainly not at tournament level. And I noticed that he drops into spaces that don't necessarily hurt the opposition. He's just frustrated and wants more of the ball. Maybe he's trying to take responsibility, but he's dropping into pockets which should be occupied by the likes of Bellingham, or in this case, maybe Mainu. And he just gets in people's way. If he drops deep and we have inverted, almost inside forwards around him that can make runs off him, then potentially if he drops in deep and he doesn't get in someone's way, the likes of Bellingham, Rice and Mainu maybe can ping a pass over the top and you've got someone who's going to be an on goal. I don't think that's necessarily Foden or Saka's game. They're both quick. They both can do it. And on the ball, Foden cuts inside quite regularly. But really the type of player that would be the one that gets on the end of a long diagonal ball is probably Rashford, who's not in the squad. Maybe Esse a little bit more perhaps could do that, who looks a really promising talent. But I don't think Kane's style of play suits the players that are around him particularly. So that's just something to look out for. And the other thing with Kane is he tends to play, even if he looks absolutely knackered, even if he's carrying an injury, we could be 3-0 up, he'll still keep him on. We could be really struggling and he's not doing anything in the game, but Southgate obviously thinks, well, he's the player who I trust to get us something. And I think at times he stays on at the expense of the balance of the team. I think it's good that Tony and Watkins have both gone, actually, because I think for the first time in a tournament for a while, we have some feasible options there as to perhaps players that can come in and do a decent job. So I keep hearing that this is a world-class squad. This is the best squad England have ever had, I think Jamie O'Hara said on TalkSport the other day. And that, you know, if Southgate wins this, I could have won it with England. And as I go through that squad there, I'm not getting those vibes at all. I think our first 11's decent. Our first 11 for me, if everyone's fit, would be Pickford, Walker, Stones, and another, I don't know who, to be honest with you, at centre-back, maybe Gomez. So I'm not too sure about the other centre-back. And Shaw at left-back. And then the midfield would be Rice, Bellingham and Mainu. And then up front would be Foden, Kane and Saka. Normally in a tournament, the team that starts the first game isn't, if you go far into a tournament, that it changes, it evolves over the tournament. We do have players that can come in and maybe this could be their breakthrough tournament, the likes of Cole Palmer, for example. Wharton looks a good player. And if you, as I said before, if you drop Foden into the midfield and then you put an Anthony Gordon on in Foden's place, then potentially those are ways that you can change the game, and we can make some dynamic substitutions. But I just don't think Southgate's that guy, and that's what concerns me, is that he's not brave enough probably to do what we need to do. I think that squad has quite a lot of adaptability within it, but I don't think we've got a particularly adaptable manager, unfortunately. So beyond our first 11, I don't know where he goes. I know where I'd go, but I'm not sure he'd do it. It's not a world-class squad for me. Who are all these players that are supposedly world-class players in the England squad? Bellingham, Foden, maybe Foden. I get shot down for this all the time. I don't think Harry Kane's world-class. He's a really good player, he's a top-class player. He's not world-class in my opinion, and I don't think there's many of them that are. So the group, we should be fine. We've got Serbia, Denmark and Slovenia. That's cool. I think we should be getting 7 points, potentially even 9 points from that group. It's not an easy group, and I think that would be bad for England, because I've seen England coast and think that they're better than they are and end up getting stung by a team. I don't want it to be a group where you can go in and go, this is a walk in the park, and just ease our way into the tournament. Serbia are a half-decent team. Denmark got to the semi-finals of the Euros. Probably the toughest game would be Denmark. And Slovenia, awkward opposition. So they're good enough to make England take it seriously, but we shouldn't be having problems with any of those teams. And we very rarely win all 3 games in a group, but I think we should be getting 7 points from that. I've not at the moment looked at what side of the draw we're on or anything like that. I'm not getting ahead of myself. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So can we win it? I don't think we'll win it. I think that the likes of France are obviously, for me, big favourites, but Spain, Portugal, Germany, I keep hearing, well, they're not as good as they used to be. No, they're probably not, but they seem to have a readiness when it comes to tournaments. Even if they're not brilliant, they just come in and just do their jobs. There's a confidence, there's an assurance, there's a coolness about those nations. In England's favour, we are now a bit more tournament savvy. We reached, obviously, the semi-finals of the World Cup in 2018. Although who would be left from that? Pickford, Stones and Kane, really. There's not many, but there's some from that, obviously. And then the Euros, when we reached the final, there's a lot of players in there that were there then. And obviously the last World Cup, when we got to the quarterfinals against France, where for me we were robbed, to be honest. I thought the officiating was shocking. So we've been through little bits of adversity there, and we've been deep into tournaments, and we've had the heartbreaker losing on pens, and obviously in the final of the Euros. So that's in our favour. But just feel with England, it's indoctrinated that even now, if you look at the history of England, losing on penalties, a brave defeat where maybe we have a player sent off or a controversial decision against us, even now it seems to be that those patterns seem to follow us and haunt us in tournaments. And I don't think that squad is good enough to transcend those patterns, unfortunately, especially with a lot of other good nations in the tournament who probably come in a little bit under the radar. So I don't think we'll win it. I think potentially France would win it. Or, as I say, I think it would come from Spain, Portugal or Germany, just because, again, those nations just very rarely get it wrong historically. So I want us to go deep in the tournament. I want us to get to at least the semi-finals so that we have a run and we can have a summer to enjoy, because there's nothing like an England summer when we go far into a tournament. It's not happened often enough in my lifetime, but when it has, it's stood out. I look back to 2018 and it was a really warm summer, and it was the Russia World Cup obviously then, and I remember the Sweden quarter-final, and I rigged up the TV outside in the garden because it was so hot, and had a few people around and watching the game. And I think other people had the same idea. As soon as England scored, you just heard people in the gardens going bonkers, and you see on YouTube all the clips of people in the fan parks with the beer flying around and stuff. It brings people together. And I think, you know, with a nation that invented football, it's our national sport. So when we do well in it, I know people get a bit carried away, and you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea. But for me, I really love all that community spirit where everyone comes together, no matter who you support in your club team. We're all together to watch England, and it's an emotional experience for me. I love it. I love the three lines, it's coming home and all that stuff. I know it's cringy for some people, but I love all that. And I want us to experience that this summer. I want us to hope we can do it. That's the most. I want us to have that hope going into the last stages of the tournament. Because to be honest, now as an adult, if England go out early doors, I'm not bothered. I don't watch the rest of the tournament. I'm not that avid a football fan that I would watch the rest of the tournament. I watch because I want England to win it or go as far as we can. So that's what I'm hoping for, that we go deep into the tournament. I think we've got potential to do that. For anyone who was interested in what I think about Gareth Southgate, I did a video on ChatUTD about him and profiling him as a potential Man United manager. I don't want him to be Man United's manager, but I think he's done a really good job for England. So that's available. You can find it quite easily, I'm sure. Just go to @ChatUTD on YouTube, you'll find it. So what to expect from the channel? Previews of games as they get nearer. Doing a debrief after games. If anything interesting happens within the squad and the build up to further games, I'll talk about that. Just cover the tournament basically. If something happens with United, the difference will be that instead of that St George's flag, it'll be 2 United scarves, and it will just be entitled Chat UTD. Where if it's ever going to be an England video, it'll be Chat ENG in the title. Looking forward to it. Excited, and hopefully it's coming home.